As I stood there in the sun-dappled garden, watching my daughter glide down the aisle in her lace gown, a smile frozen on my face, my heart seized like an old clock winding down. The groom turned to greet her, his profile sharp against the white arbor, and in that instant the world tilted. Those eyes, deep brown with that faint scar above the left brow, I'd seen them before in a hospital room decades ago, on the tiny face of the son I'd given up. My legs nearly buckled, but I held on, whispering to myself, Lord, no, not like this. The wedding was everything Emily had dreamed of since she was a little girl, twirling in my old dresses. Pink peonies lined the paths, their sweet scent mingling with the fresh-cut grass underfoot. Guests murmured approvals from their white folding chairs, the string quartet playing a soft melody that should have soothed me. But as I clutched my bouquet, simple daisies because Emily knew I loved the wild ones from our backyard, my mind raced back through the years, pulling at threads I'd long buried. Emily looked radiant, her auburn hair cascading in loose waves, just like mine at her age. She beamed at her fiancé Mark, who stood tall in his gray suit, his hand steady as he took hers. Mark, the name I'd chosen for him all those years ago before I signed the papers. How could this be? I'd convinced myself he'd have a new name, a new life far from mine. Yet here he was about to marry my daughter, his sister. The thought hit me like cold water, stealing my breath. I forced a smile for the photographer, but inside, a storm brewed, memories flooding in unbidden. It was supposed to be a day of joy, the culmination of months of planning. Emily had met Mark at a charity event 2 years prior, where they were both volunteers at a local shelter. She'd come home glowing, telling me about this kind, ambitious man who made her laugh like no one else. Mom, he's perfect, she'd said over tea in our kitchen, her eyes sparkling. I'd hugged her, happy to see her so alive after her string of bad relationships. Mark had charmed me too, polite with a quiet strength that reminded me of my late husband Tom. We'd shared dinners, holidays, and even a family trip to the lake house. Never once did I suspect. How could I? The adoption was closed. I'd been young, scared, and alone. But now, as the officiant began the ceremony, his voice a gentle drone about love and commitment, I scanned Mark's face again. The way his jaw set when he smiled, the slight dimple in his chin, it was undeniable. I'd stared at that newborn face for hours before they took him away, memorizing every feature as tears blurred my vision. It's for the best, the social worker had said, her hand on my shoulder. I was 19, unwed, with no family to help. My parents had disowned me, and the father, a fleeting college romance, had vanished. So I signed, praying he'd find a good home, a better life than I could give. The vows started, Emily's voice steady and full of love. Mark, from the day we met, you've been my rock. My hands trembled in my lap, the program crumpling under my fingers. I glanced at my sister, Clara, seated beside me, her expression serene. She knew my secret, had been the one to drive me to the hospital all those years ago. Did she see it too? No, she couldn't. She'd never met the baby. Panic rose in my chest, hot and tight. What if I said nothing? Let them marry in ignorance? The thought sickened me. But speaking up now in front of everyone, it would shatter them. As Mark began his vows, his voice warm and sincere, a memory flashed. The last time I'd held him, his tiny fist gripping my finger. I'd whispered promises I couldn't keep. Now fate had brought him back, not as my son but as my daughter's husband-to-be. The irony twisted like a knife. I shifted in my seat, the wooden chair creaking softly, drawing a glance from the woman next to me. I managed a weak nod, but my mind screamed, how do I stop this without breaking everything? The ceremony paused for readings, a friend reciting a poem about eternal bonds. Eternal, the word echoed in my head. This wasn't just a wedding, it was a collision of lives I'd tried to keep separate. Emily deserved happiness, not this shadow from my past. Mark deserved truth, not deception born of my youthful mistakes. As the officiant asked if anyone objected, my heart pounded so loudly I feared they'd hear it. My mouth opened then closed. Not here, not like this, but soon. Before it was too late. By the time they exchanged rings, my resolve had hardened. I'd find a way to tell them, gently, privately. The applause rose as they kissed, sealing what I knew I had to unravel. As we moved to the reception tent, laughter and clinking glasses filling the air, I trailed behind, the weight of 30 years pressing down. The peony's perfume turned cloying, the sun too bright. Emily caught my eye, waving me over with a grin. Mom, come dance, she called. I forced a smile as I stepped forward, but inside the storm raged on. That evening, as the guests mingled under string lights, sipping champagne and sharing toasts, I pulled Clara aside. The band played a soft jazz tune, masking our whispers. Do you see it? I asked, my voice barely audible. She frowned, following my gaze to Mark, who was twirling Emily on the dance floor. See what, Sarah? I swallowed hard, the words tasting like ash. He's my boy. The one I gave up. Clara's eyes widened, her hand flying to her mouth. Oh God, are you sure? I nodded, tears pricking. We'd kept it secret all these years. Me, the young girl who'd made a mistake, and her, the supportive sister who'd helped me through. Tom had known too, God rest his soul, but we'd never told Emily. She was our miracle baby, born 5 years later after Tom and I married. A fresh start, or so I'd thought. We slipped away to a quiet corner of the garden, the music fading behind us. The air was cooler here, scented with night-blooming jasmine. Clara hugged me, her embrace familiar and steady. What are you going to do? She whispered. I wiped my eyes, staring at the stars peeking through the branches. I have to tell them. But how? It's their wedding day. The rest of the night blurred. Speeches, cake cutting, more dances. I played the proud mother, toasting to their future, my voice steady by sheer will. But as the guests departed and Emily and Mark waved goodbye before their honeymoon drive, I knew time was short. They'd be back in a week for a family brunch. That's when I'd do it. Gather the proof, the old adoption papers I'd kept hidden in the attic, and face the truth. Little did I know the web was more tangled than I imagined. Mark's adoptive parents had passed years ago, but he'd been searching for his birth mother. And Emily? She'd always felt like something was missing in our family stories. Fate, it seemed, had its own plans. In the days that followed, as I sat alone in my quiet house, the ticking of the grandfather clock echoing through the rooms, I reflected on how life circles back. I'd built a good life after that painful choice. Married Tom, raised Emily with love, and worked as a schoolteacher shaping young minds. Our home was cozy, filled with photos of vacations, birthdays, and the everyday joys. But the secret had always lingered, a shadow in the corner. Emily was my light, spirited and kind, with Tom's easy laugh and my stubborn streak. She'd studied nursing just like I'd once dreamed, and met Mark while helping at a community center. He was an architect, building homes for low-income families. Ironic, given how I'd worried about providing for him. They'd bonded over shared values and dreams of a big family. Now that dream hung by a thread. I spent those days digging through boxes in the attic, dust motes dancing in the flashlight beam. The adoption file was yellowed, the ink faded, but the details matched. Birth date, the hospital, even the scar from a minor complication during delivery. I'd named him Mark after my grandfather, a small gift before letting go. His adoptive name was the same. Perhaps they'd kept it. Doubt crept in. Was I wrong? A coincidence? But no, the resemblance was too strong. I called the adoption agency, my voice trembling as I inquired anonymously. Closed adoptions were sealed, but they confirmed general timelines. The first clue had come earlier, though I hadn't recognized it. During a family dinner months ago, Mark had shared stories of his childhood, growing up in a nearby town and his parents' love for gardening like mine. He'd mentioned feeling different, searching his roots. Emily had teased him about it, but I'd felt a chill, brushing it off as nerves about the wedding. Now suspicion turned to certainty. I paced the kitchen, the linoleum cool under my feet, brewing endless cups of tea that went cold. How to tell them without destroying everything? Therapy? DNA test. Yes, that would confirm it gently. When they returned, tanned and happy, I invited them over. The house smelled of fresh-baked apple pie, Emily's favorite. We sat in the living room, sunlight streaming through lace curtains, chatting about their trip. Then with a deep breath I handed them the file. There's something you both need to know. Their faces shifted from confusion to shock as I explained. My youth, the adoption, the uncanny match. Emily's hand flew to her mouth, Mark's eyes widening in recognition. Mom? He whispered, the word hanging heavy. Tears flowed, questions tumbled out. Why? How? We ordered a DNA kit that night and results rushed back in days. Positive. Siblings. The wedding was annulled quietly, hearts breaking but not shattering. What could have been horror became a miracle. Gaining a son, a brother. We navigated the shock together, therapy sessions filled with raw honesty. Mark, my son, forgave the past and embraced his new family. Emily grieved the romance but found strength in the bond. Our family expanded, love redeeming the lost years. The days after the revelation blurred into a haze of emotions, like a storm that refused to break. We sat there in my living room, the DNA kit ordered with shaking hands, the pie forgotten on the coffee table, its cinnamon scent now cloying in the heavy air. Emily's face was pale, her honeymoon glow erased as she stared at the old papers in her lap. Mom, how could you not tell me? Her voice cracked, not with anger, but with the raw hurt of a child learning her world wasn't as solid as she'd believed. I reached for her hand, but she pulled back slightly, not harshly, just enough to make my heart ache. I was so young, sweetheart. I thought I was giving him a better chance. Mark, my son, the word still foreign on my tongue, sat silent, his brow furrowed, turning the birth certificate over in his hands. His fingers, long and steady like Tom's, traced the faded signature. I always wondered, he murmured finally, his voice low and even. My adoptive parents were wonderful, but there was this gap. I started searching last year, but the records were sealed. Never imagined this. We talked late into the night, the grandfather clock chiming the hours like a solemn reminder. Tea went cold in our mugs, the steam rising in lazy curls before vanishing. I recounted it all, the lonely pregnancy hiding from judgmental eyes in a small apartment, and Clara sneaking me food when our parents turned away. The labor was quick and painful, and then that final hold, his tiny cries echoing in the sterile room. I named you Mark, I said, tears slipping down my cheeks. After Grandpa, I wanted you to have something of us. Emily listened, her initial shock softening into quiet sobs. She leaned against Mark instinctively, then caught herself pulling away with a gasp. The reality hit her anew. The man she'd loved and planned a life with was her brother. What do we do now? She whispered, her voice small. Mark wrapped an arm around her shoulders, brotherly now, protective. We figure it out, together. His eyes met mine, and for the first time I saw forgiveness there, tentative but real. The DNA results arrived 3 days later, via email, the notification chime cutting through the silence of my kitchen like a knife. Positive match. Siblings. I printed it out, the paper warm from the printer, and we gathered again. No pie this time, just stark truth on the table. Emily buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking. Our wedding, it was all a lie. Mark knelt beside her, his voice steady. Not a lie, just not what we thought. We can annul it quietly. No one has to know yet. But secrets have a way of seeping out, don't they? We decided to handle the annulment first, meeting with a lawyer in a nondescript office downtown. The waiting room smelled of stale coffee and old magazines, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. The attorney, a kind woman with wire-rimmed glasses, nodded sympathetically as we explained, omitting the full details at first, citing irreconcilable differences. But when the truth emerged from the paperwork, her eyes widened briefly before professionalism took over. This is unusual but manageable. We'll keep it discreet. Word spread slowly as it does in small towns. Emily's friends noticed the missing rings and the cancelled honeymoon photos on social media. Whispers started at the grocery store, where Mrs. Harlan from down the street cornered me by the produce. Everything okay with the newlyweds, Sarah? They seem quiet. I forced a smile, selecting apples with deliberate care, their waxy skins cool against my palms. Just adjusting to married life, I replied, but the lie tasted bitter. Clara was our anchor, hosting quiet dinners where we could talk without pretense. Her kitchen, with its herb pots on the windowsill and the faint scent of lavender from her garden, became a sanctuary. You've carried this too long alone, she said one evening, stirring soup on the stove. The wooden spoon clacked softly against the pot. Mark often joined us, sharing stories from his upbringing, his adoptive mom's apple crisp recipe, his dad's love for fishing. Parallels to our family emerged like echoes. He too loved daisies just like me. The public consequence came at a family gathering 2 months later, one we'd postponed but couldn't avoid forever. Aunts, uncles, and cousins converged at Clara's for a belated welcome home brunch. The table groaned under platters of eggs, fresh bread, and fruit, the air alive with chatter. Emily and Mark arrived together, not as a couple but as siblings. Their ease is natural now. I watched from the doorway, my heart swelling and aching in equal measure. During coffee, as steam rose from mugs and laughter filled the room, Emily stood, clinking her spoon against her glass. The chatter hushed, forks pausing mid-bite. We have something to share, she said, her voice steady. Mark stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder. They explained, gently without blame. My youthful mistake, the adoption, the shocking reunion. Gasps rippled through the room, Aunt Louise's hand fluttering to her chest. Oh, Sarah, Uncle Ben murmured. His eyes are kind. I stepped forward then, my voice trembling but clear. I kept it secret to protect everyone, but secrets, they don't heal, they fester. Tears flowed freely now, not just mine. Hugs followed, with stories of similar hidden pains emerging from cousins I'd thought picture perfect. No judgment, only understanding. The family didn't fracture. It mended, threads pulling tighter. In the weeks that followed, the consequence rippled outward. Mark's colleagues learned bits through him, offering support. Emily returned to work, her nursing shifts a welcome distraction, patient stories reminding her of resilience. We sought therapy as a trio, the counselor's office a neutral ground with soft chairs and tissues at the ready. Sessions unearthed old wounds, My guilt, Emily's grief over lost love, and Mark's sense of displacement. But with each hour, forgiveness bloomed, like spring after a harsh winter. Mark moved closer, renting a place nearby and joining Sunday dinners where we shared recipes from both his worlds. Emily dated again, eventually, a kind doctor from her hospital, her laughter returning like bird song. I found peace in the garden, planting daisies with Mark, our hands in the soil, talking of the future. The heartbreak could have destroyed us, but the truth set us free. Love, I learned, isn't about perfection. It's about embracing the messy, beautiful whole. The months turned into a gentle rhythm of healing, like the slow turn of seasons in our small town. Mark stayed close, helping with yard work on weekends, his laughter mixing with the hum of the lawnmower as we raked leaves together. The air carried the earthy scent of autumn soil, and I'd pause, watching him, marveling at how life had returned what I'd lost. Tell me about your adoptive dad, I'd say over coffee on the porch, the steam curling in the crisp morning light. He'd share stories, fishing trips, life lessons on integrity, and I'd see echoes of the man I'd hoped he'd become. No resentment in his voice, just gratitude for the parents who'd raised him, blended now with curiosity about me. Emily took longer to mend, her heart bruised from the sudden shift. She'd spend evenings in her old room, journaling under the soft glow of her bedside lamp, the pages filling with questions and what. One night, as rain pattered against the window, she knocked on my door. "Mom, can we talk?" Her voice was soft and tentative. I nodded, patting the bed beside me. The quilt, patched from old clothes, felt familiar under us as she curled up like she did as a child. I loved him. Love him still, but differently now. Tears glistened on her lashes. How do I move past that? I held her, the scent of her shampoo, lavender just like always, filling the room. One day at a time, sweetheart. Love changes shape, but it doesn't disappear. We cried together, then laughed through the tears when she recalled their first date mishaps, now reframed as sibling antics. Therapy helped. Our sessions were a safe harbor. The counselor, Dr. Ellis, with her warm smile and notepad, guided us through the layers. My guilt for the secret, Emily's grief for the future she'd imagined, and Mark's quiet anger at the years stolen. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, she'd say, her voice steady like an anchor. It's choosing to build anew. Family outings became our balm. We drove to the lake house Tom and I had bought years ago, the one with the creaky dock and wildflowers along the path. The water lapped gently as we picnicked, sharing sandwiches and stories. Mark taught Emily to skip stones. Their competitive banter was light and easy. "You're cheating," she'd accuse, splashing him, and he'd grin, that dimple flashing. I watched from the blanket, the sun warming my skin, feeling a peace I hadn't known possible. Clara joined sometimes, her presence a reminder of the support I'd always had, even in silence. Challenges came, of course. Whispers in town turned to questions. Why the quick annulment? We chose honesty in small doses, sharing with close friends over tea. Mrs. Harlan, ever the gossip, softened when I explained at church coffee hour, her hand on mine. Oh, Sarah, what a blessing in disguise. No scandal erupted. Instead, support flowed, cards, casseroles, and quiet nods of understanding. It taught me that vulnerability invites compassion, not judgment. Mark delved into his roots, poring over old photos with me in the attic. Dust danced in the beams of light as we uncovered boxes, baby clothes I'd saved, letters from the agency. "Why didn't you search for me?" he asked once, his tone curious, not accusatory. I sighed, folding a tiny onesie. "Fear mostly, that you'd hate me or that I'd disrupt your life." He hugged me then, strong and sure. "You gave me a good start, and now we've got time." Emily found love again slowly with Alex from work, a gentle soul who made her eyes light up over breakfast tales. Their first date, she confided, felt right, unshadowed. Mark dated too, a teacher named Lisa, and their shared passion for community work was a solid foundation. Our family dinners expanded, laughter echoing off the walls, the table set with extra plates. Through it all, I reflected in my journal, the pages a testament to growth. I'd carried that secret like a stone in my pocket, weighing me down. Releasing it freed us all. Love isn't tidy, it's resilient, weaving through mistakes to create something more substantial. As winter gave way to spring, daisies bloomed in the garden again, their white petals unfurling like hope. We planted more together, me, Emily, Mark, the soil rich under our fingers. "To new beginnings," Mark said, patting the earth. Emily smiled, her hand in mine. Yes, I thought to that. The journey wasn't without scars, but they reminded us of our strength. I learned that redemption comes not from hiding, but from facing the light, even when it blinds at first. Our family, once fractured by silence, now stood whole, bound by truth and grace. Looking back now with the clarity time brings, I see how that wedding day wasn't an end but a rebirth. Our family, once defined by what was hidden, now thrived in the open. Mark integrated seamlessly, his presence filling spaces I hadn't realized were empty. He helped renovate the lake house, his architect's eye transforming the old porch into a sunlit haven where we gathered for barbecues. The scent of grilling burgers mingled with lake water, children's laughter from neighboring cabins echoing ours. Emily's new nieces and nephews from Mark's side. However, we were still navigating those connections. Lisa, Mark's girlfriend, became a fixture too, her warm hugs and homemade pies easing tensions. "Your family now," she'd say, squeezing my hand, her voice soft like Clara's. We shared holidays, Thanksgiving turkey carved with stories of blended past. Emily and Alex's relationship blossomed. He proposed quietly by the dock one evening, the ring simple like Tom's had been. "Mom, he's kind," Emily confided as we planned her second wedding. A small affair, intimate without the shadows. Mark walked her down the aisle this time, brotherly pride in his eyes, and I stood beside Clara, tears of joy blurring the scene. Therapy continued. A weekly ritual in Dr. Ellis's cozy office, the walls adorned with abstract art that sparked metaphors for our journeys. "You've rewritten your story," she said in one session, her pen pausing. "We had betrayal by fate to redemption through choice." I volunteered at an adoption support group, sharing my tale anonymously at first, then openly, the room's quiet nods affirming I wasn't alone. "Secrets steal joy," I'd tell them, my voice steady now. The group became my community, faces lighting up with shared burdens lifted. Challenges lingered, of course. A cousin's offhand comment at a reunion stirred old doubts, but we addressed it as a family, over coffee and honest words. Mark faced his own grief, visiting his adoptive parents' graves with me, laying daisies and whispering thanks. "They'd be proud," I said, wind rustling the leaves. He nodded, arm around my shoulders. Emily's wedding to Alex was perfect. Sunset vows by the lake, peonies in her bouquet. As they danced, I watched with Clara, our hands linked. "You did good, sis," she murmured. The music swelled, and for the first time in years I felt whole. Life's twists teach us resilience, that love endures when rooted in truth. I wouldn't change the pain, for it led to this abundance. A son found, a daughter strengthened, a family reborn. And you, dear listener? If fate handed you such a secret, would you speak it, even if it risked everything? Share in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. If this touched you, subscribe for more stories of the heart, where grace always finds a way. As the years unfolded, our family found a new normal, one richer for the truths we'd uncovered. Mark and Lisa married in a quiet ceremony at the lake house, their vows exchanged under the same arbor where Emily's first wedding had been. I stood as mother to both now, my heart full as I pinned a daisy boutonniere on his lapel, the petals soft against my fingers. "You've always been mine," I whispered, and he smiled, that dimple deepening. Emily and Alex welcomed a baby girl, little Grace, whose cries filled our home with joy, her tiny fists gripping my finger just as Mark's had long ago. We gathered often, holidays alive with children's laughter, the table set with dishes from all our blended traditions. Apple crisp from his side, my grandma's cornbread from ours. Clara passed last spring, peacefully in her sleep, her lavender-scented kitchen now mine to tend. Her loss stung, but it reminded me of life's fragile beauty, urging me to cherish the moments. In her memory, we planted a garden at the community center, daisies and herbs blooming for all to enjoy. Volunteering there, I shared stories with young mothers facing hard choices, my voice a bridge from pain to hope. "You're stronger than you know," I'd say, echoing the words I wished someone had told me at 19. Healing isn't linear. Some days old guilts whisper, but I've learned to silence them with gratitude. Our scars tell a story of resilience, of love that bends but doesn't break. Emily teases Mark about their almost romance now. The pain faded into family lore. "Best big brother ever," she says, ruffling his hair. Me. I walk the garden paths at dawn, the dew cool on my skin, thanking the heavens for second chances. Dear friends, life hands us secrets that can bind or free us. If you carried one like mine, would you have the courage to let it go, trusting love to catch you? Share your heart in the comments. Your stories heal us all. If this tale moved you, subscribe for more whispers from the soul, where redemption waits in the wings. Until next time, be gentle with yourself and those you love.